Have you ever faced a high-stakes situation unprepared? Well, I'm going to give you the answer so that you never do that again. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Hi, friends. I'm Susie, and I'm so glad that you made the choice to be with me today because this topic is so important to me. And it's likely because I have suffered the consequences many times of not having situational awareness. And it's so important, and it can be really easy to tweak your awareness about a situation before you go in. And I remember one example of when this happened to me and really burned me was I was going to listen to a call when I was maneuvering through the airport. And I had told my colleague that I would just be listening in because I would not be set in a place where I could really represent our position. And I was starting to listen. They were doing introductions. And right as I got into a packed train at the airport, my colleague threw it to me. And it was really quiet in the train. And all of a sudden I took on this persona of like this really strong, like, we got to get what we have to get. And it didn't go well for us because I wasn't ready. I wasn't in the place I needed to be. I hadn't set my mindset. And so that's what this is all about, is being really clear about how do you want to show up? What's important to the other party? And how are you going to walk in? And as I was getting ready for this, I looked up some of the research around situational awareness, and it's a little eye-opening to consider how risky it can be if you aren't situationally aware. A friend of mine that I used to work with was a private detective for a while, and he said he followed people around for weeks. And he goes, it was astonishing that they never noticed him, which made me really nervous. He goes, it was the most eye-opening thing. He said, if you want to realize how unaware people are, follow them around. And this research is similar from an aviation research firm. They said that 85% of flight safety incidents were flagged as loss of situational awareness, that pilots aren't crashing because of lack of skill, but because they missed the moment the game changed. I know, isn't that crazy? And then in the medical and the healthcare industries, they taught clinicians to be aware and look for the horrors in room, quote unquote, the room of horrors, as they called it. And they said that 1,000 clinicians, they doubled their awareness of hazards by just giving them this prompt before they walk in to look for this list of things. And so they trained this awareness, and it literally saved lives. And before that, they just weren't thinking about that. They were so focused on other things. And they say the same about driving and our mindfulness. It makes me really nervous to think about this because we're so distracted these days, and we're looking at our watches and our phones, and notifications come up even when we're driving. But without being a defensive driver, by being proactive as you're driving, that decreases your ability to avoid an accident. And there's research that supports that. It's really crazy. So situational awareness is seeing what's happening, know what that means, and then predicting what to do next. That's the FAA safety.gov that came from their site around situational awareness. See what's happening, know what it means, and predict what's next. It's crazy that we go from meeting to meeting in our schedules. And so often, even just thinking about what is high stakes for you, or what do I have to be prepared for, and even looking through your schedule so that you can make that tweak, even a few moments of getting your head in the right place can make a notable difference. In my situational awareness workshops, I end with this C.L.A.W framework, and it's about how do you be situationally aware with a framework that gives you some things to consider. So I'm going to introduce you to that today to give you some context to what you should be spying before you go into a situation. What do you need to be looking for so that you don't just go in with your own agenda and blinded to the people, the tone, the other things that are in the room that you might not be geared into because you're not taking that time to shift your awareness to be aware of that. So let me tell you about C.L.A.W. C.L.A.W is C-L-A.W. I always like to make my hand look like a claw, clawing your way through a meeting or a high stakes situation. It shouldn't feel like that. It should feel very intentional. It should feel like you have control of the situation so that you can be more agile in the moment so you can walk through it. So C.L.A.W stands for the C is context. The L in C.L.A.W is for leverage. A is action. And then the last is W for walk. Know when to go. So while I take this break, be thinking about something that's high stakes for you, a high stakes moment that's coming up for you, a conversation that you can apply C.L.A.W. When I think of how I could have used C.L.A.W, so many situations come to mind. I was doing a presentation for a senior team, and I had worked on it with my team and my colleagues just so I had some more context, but we hadn't thought through, or I hadn't thought through really the people that will be in front of me. And I had 12 slides. I had all the data with it. So I went in and I was ready to go because I had practiced it so much. It was kind of like the back of my hand. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I didn't even need to look at my notes, but I had really thought through the timing of those 12 slides. Really early in, like the second slide in, I noticed that people got a little fidgety. And finally, the CFO was like, what's the bottom line ask? He said it really bluntly. What is the bottom line ask? What I said in the moment was, I'm going to get to that, which made him not very happy. And so I continued on and we went through the story and I kept losing them more and more. I wanted to stick with what my plan was, and that wasn't working for them. They wanted to understand what were the trade-offs, what was the bottom line, and really at the end of the day, how were they going to say yes? And I had missed that. I didn't read the room. I didn't think about their current priorities. I didn't think about the combination of who was in the room and what questions they would ask. So I missed the opportunity and had to circle back, and my boss had to start getting involved because I had missed the meeting. I didn't deliver in that meeting. So she had to help me regain the influence as it related specifically to this role. So when I look back and I think about how could I have done differently with C.L.A.W, in context, their priority was speed and decision making. They didn't want the education. They wanted to know what the bottom line was so that they understood what they were saying yes to. And I didn't give it to them at the right time. I was giving it to them later. It would have been helpful for them to have it at the beginning. The leverage was their interest wasn't the data. They wanted to look at what they had to say no to in order to say yes to me. So it was a piece of the story that I didn't even have in the presentation. Action, that's about in the moment, what should I have done? I should have never said that we're going to get to that answer. I should have just said, let me answer that right now. And then if I need to go back to what I skip, we'll go there. I wasn't able to pivot in the moment because I only had my plan. I was only thinking about it from my perspective. And then the W walk, even if they pushed back, I could have suggested how we could continue on the conversation. I should have stopped and been able to say, listen, this was a miss. I need to recast this for this group. Let me do that either in real time or this is how I'm going to follow up with a one pager. So C.L.A.W is just that ability to get out of your own head so that you can color the room with what you need to be aware of before, during, and after. I was working with a client last week that had to meet with a colleague that was really smart, really driven, really good, but was really stretched thin, and deadlines were slipping, and she needed to talk to him because his work, the team's work that he was doing was just not leveling up like it needed to. So she needed to have a one-on-one with him. And when she walked in, he looked really deflated. And he just started saying, I've been drowning. My manager just added all this stuff. He was complaining. And she really had to think about in that moment, even though she hadn't anticipated any of that, she was able to shift quickly and think about what she needed to do in that moment, because she still needed to have a great outcome and help this person understand that. But she needed to be sympathetic in that moment to at least hear him and understand where he's coming from. So when you think about C.L.A.W in the situation, she wished she would have thought about that emotional response. She would have realized then that that tone was something that she had to shift her perspective on. And she knew enough to do that. She realized and recognized that she needed to at least acknowledge that pressure that was coming from above and think about how she could be somebody that took a bit of that from him, or how could she help him articulate why he was drowning. And so that was really important, that context, being able to see that. The leverage that she had when she thought about that was what was important to him was good work. And that was important to her too. So that alignment, those interests for her to be able to then shift to, gosh, I know you at the core of who you are, and you want to do good work. And so all of this noise around you is really impacting that. How can I give you some relief? What can I do? So that action, her ability to see the interests that he had, to align those with hers, allowed her in that moment to give some opportunities for them to partner together, to co-present to his boss what needed to kind of be deprioritized so that he could deliver this in a good way. So she understood that her visibility and her influence was at a different level. So in that moment, they had a plan together. So the walk was what they agreed to together. How could they work together to alleviate some of the noise that's going on with him, but to also deliver that project at the standards that both of them felt comfortable with? Her ability in that moment to shift and think about C.L.A.W, about what she needed to do, his interests, what was important, what was at stake, how she had to be in the moment, and then what is that solution? Not something that she had walked into considering. She thought it was going to be a totally different conversation, but that agility in the moment, because she'd practiced C.L.A.W so many times, allowed her to show up in the right way. So there's a lot of components to C.L.A.W. There's actually 3 main points to each one of the letters because a high stakes situation could be so complex. So I'm just going to give you 3 aspects of C.L.A.W that you can consider in your next difficult conversation, anything that's high stakes for you. So the first one is I'm going to take a page out of Mel Robbins' playbook and say, practice the 5-second rule. And that's around context. And the 5-second rule is when you feel like you're triggered or you identify that you're going to face this high stakes situation, count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in your head to give yourself a little bit of space to decide what context that you can pull from to help you be mindful in the situation. So this can be helpful if you are suddenly facing a high stakes situation, if you become triggered by something, or if a low stakes situation clicks into high stakes. Somebody walks in the room unexpectedly at a very high level and you don't even know why they're there. So being able to make space and think about what is your question going to be? or what you're going to do to respond, gaining your composure so that you don't react, but that you respond in a way that's going to work for you. So it's a 5-second rule. Thanks, Mel. Taking that from you. The second one is your 30 seconds before you go in and think about the leverage. So the leverage is about the interests of the other party, the interests, your own interests, but it's also the stakes of the deal. So if you just take 30 seconds to consider that, even if you've done a really lengthy preparation, which is always a great best practice, taking those 30 seconds before you go in to consider again the interest, what's important to the other side, what are the stakes that are important to them, what are the interests that are important to them, and get realigned, change that orientation that you have so that you are looking at it from their perspective. It allows you to be more of an ally instead of looking like you're a blocker or that you're trying to manipulate to get them to do something that they don't want to do. When you can frame it up in a way that they see that you see them, it helps them to be more open and collaborative. When we show that we are only focused on what's important to us, that signals to the other party to do the same. And they focus only on what's important to them. When we focus and shine a light on what's important to the other person, the rule of reciprocity makes it easier for them to do that too. It opens up a mindset to be abundant for both parties. And that's where collaboration and creativity flourish. Approaching it by showing them that you understand what's important to them has so much power. And then the last is really being clear about what is your outcome. And if you don't get that outcome, what are you going to do? When you pre-decide that helps you move through with confidence that you know you have a plan. Having a walk plan is half the battle. No deal is better than a bad deal. And so if you're not getting what you need and you're really clear about what that floor is, walk away. You don't have to do it as like a jerk. You don't have to just like storm out. You know, we get like the movie scene in our head that we're going to be like throwing something on the table and saying, well, then fine with you, and just storm out. But really it can be something that says, I'm really disappointed. I was really hopeful that we could come to an agreement and I see that we can't. So I'm just going to have to say, I appreciate your time, but this isn't going to work for me. See, it doesn't have to happen. So don't let that moment, sometimes we're involved in something and we allow ourselves to stay in it because of that commitment bias that we have. But you want to have a plan to walk. So practice the 5-second rule, get the context so that you can, in the moment, become proactive instead of reactive. Use that 30 seconds to consider what's important to them. And then the third is have a plan for your walk. Be really clear about what's important to you and even practice what it's going to feel like to walk away. So remember C.L.A.W. C.L.A.W. stands for context, leverage, action, and walk. Every room, every time, you control what you notice, and what you notice controls your leverage. It is key. And so when I think about an action I want to challenge you to do, I really thought about this because I think we all wait to think about walking. And I want you to think about, what is my walk away for this situation? If I don't get X, how am I going to walk away? What will that sound like? Even considering what is that point, that tension that you're going to walk away, it may not even happen, but it gives you more clarity about that situation. So focus on that. That's like the last one that we focus on. So I want that to be the first for you. Think about the claw and consider that piece. I think situational awareness is so key. I actually did a workshop for a team a few weeks ago, and the senior leader stayed the entire time. And afterwards, he talked to the group about his takeaway, and he said, situational awareness is such a key component to being aware in every situation so that we show up, not just show up, but be seen and get the outcomes that we need. So think about that for you. How can you increase your awareness, your claw, and how are you going to start putting these key tips in place for you starting today? Consider your walk away. That is your mission if you choose to take it, is that walk. I'm so happy that you are here. I would love to hear how you use this to save your own bacon. The stories are the ones that really fill me up. So I'd love to hear from you. Share this with somebody that needs to hear it. That's always a win-win. Shows to them that you're thinking of them and that you believe in investment in them. And that's always good. A negotiator mindset isn't just what you do, it's how you see. So apply it early, apply it often, so you skip the negotiator hangover. I'm Susie. Until next time.